Hey, I'm Rohit. This is IndigoMusic.com, and joining me on a very special World Environment Day edition of Rock the Talk is an Academy Award winner, the director of The Elephant Whisperers, and a crusader for coexistence, Kartiki Gonsalves. Good morning, and a very happy World Environment Day to you.
Good morning, and I'm extremely happy to be on the show with you today.
Now, it's our pleasure. Now, thank you so much for taking some time out. First of all, I want to congratulate you on winning the most prestigious award when it comes to filmmaking. I'm talking about the Academy Awards. Congratulations on that. I just want to know, Belly, Bowman, and Raghu, when did you stumble upon the story?
This goes back to 2017 is when I was driving on my way back from Ooty to Bangalore, in fact, and I saw baby Raghu walking along the side of the road. And I fell in love with this tiny little elephant, but then it made me question the entire process of why this young elephant was with a human being. And that basically led me on to pull over my car, jump out, and go and join them. And I joined them for a bath in the river, which is really special because I got to spend so much time with them. And over the period of that time, I saw this beautiful bond between Bowman and Raghu.
Right.
And that made me question, why was this young little calf with a human being, and why did they share this very special bond? And that made me go on to realize that the Asian elephants are endangered, and that Raghu's mother had been electrocuted. And I think that just goes on to looking at coexistence and how we need to move forward. And here you had this tiny little elephant calf that was basically struggling, and his mother had basically wandered into a nearby village in search of food and water.
Right.
So basically, this was the direct impact of climate change, I would say. And that's how the story really came into coexistence, because I think in this time, there are just so many stories of animals being killed, species dying out. And this was such a positive story that highlights the beauty of man and animal working together. And I strongly believe that coexistence is the way that we need to move forward into the future. And that only through mutual respect and cooperation can we actually save the planet.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful story. And The Elephant Whisperers, I was literally waiting for my flight in Dubai when I watched this movie for the first time, because my flight got delayed and my friends were saying, "Hey, watch this, watch this." I said, "Okay, let me give it a try." And I had a broad smile throughout my whole flight back to Bangalore after watching the movie. And it's a 40-minute documentary. But how long did it take for you and your team to finish the project?
It took a whole 6 years for this. It started off in
Wow.
2017 and we completed in 2022. In fact, just a couple of months before we had our global release. And it's been a beautiful, long journey. I think when it comes to verite documentary, you spend a whole lot of time out in the field. And what we did with the Elephant Whisperers is we basically documented their life day in and day out over certain periods of time. And that's how the movie came into being.
I mean, so much of footage and it comes down to 40 minutes. Was it hard to let go of a few parts? Did it ever happen on the edit flow saying, "I think this is good, let's keep this, let's not keep this"? Did it happen?
Actually, no, because I think when I first started out the documentary, the one thing that drew me to the entire subject was the entire coexistence part, and also the sacred bond between man and animal.
Right.
And that's something that stayed with me right up to the very end. And I think that was my guiding light throughout the entire process of the documentary. When it comes to documentary, you can only follow the story. You can't preempt what's going to happen. And that's exactly what happened on this documentary. Things changed the way, and they changed drastically. Like, I didn't realize Raghu was going to be taken away. So in this case, you just have to follow the story.
Right.
And when it came to bringing down 450 hours of footage down to the 40 minutes, that itself is a challenge. But I also realized that it made my life much easier, because when you go back to your core message about the sacred bond between man and animal, and specifically between Raghu, Bowman, Belly, and Amu, then everything else that was not that was taken out, which made my life a lot easier. Because when it comes to the edit process, you really need to forget the fact that you have all these stunning shots. And if it doesn't fit into the story that you want to tell, then all that footage has to go out. And that's something that you really have to pay attention as a director.
Right. And you are someone who loves working with natural light. So maybe that also added a bit of more pressure for your team, maybe to shoot everything in natural light, or was anywhere an artificial light used in the entire movie?
Not at all. Actually, I mean, we did have a little bit of artificial lighting, if you're going to go that specific, because within Bowman and Belly's house there was candlelight and there was obviously light bulbs, so I would consider that as the artificial lighting. But the reason I chose to do that is because I am a natural history photographer and a cinematographer turned director, as this is my debut as a documentary filmmaker.
Right.
So I love light. I think natural light is absolutely beautiful and mesmerizing. And I work a lot with it myself. So that's something that I believe the natural world comes out in the most stunning ways through natural light. So that's something I really focused on. But having said that, I chose the cinematographers I wanted to work with, who really worked well with light, because I knew that was the one thing that I was looking for, apart from the cinematographers being able to capture the beautiful bond, not just with animals, but also with human beings. And I think the main thing is to capture emotions. So working with natural light was absolutely beautiful. We did, I mean, I think the beautiful part is that everybody on my crew loved natural light. So it was most enjoyable setting out early in the mornings and late in the evenings to be able to capture this light, because during the day you have very flat light.
Yeah.
So, and doesn't appeal very well on camera. So, but also I feel like in the natural world, the best timings to be out in the forests are in the morning and evenings, because that's when you have the most animal activity as well. So I think that's just the best way to put it. The natural light worked really well with the habitat that we were in, and it all just worked really well. And I do have to admit that the other reason why I didn't want to bring in artificial lighting like on a fiction set is because I really wanted to convey the life that Bowman and Belly had in this small little village that they live
Right.
in. And to bring that out into storytelling, you really need to go back to the real way that they live and not try to bring in lights to make it fancier, because that's not the way they live. Sometimes they're walking around with lanterns, sometimes with a candlelight. And that itself has a beautiful mood to it, which kind of sets the feeling for the entire documentary, I think.
I absolutely, and of course, in the documentary, we can see that Belly and Bowman, they have a very emotional attachment with Raghu and Amu. How emotionally attached was you and your film crew with the elephants?
Well, it's a good question. We all became family. We all became really tight family, and I think that happens when you spend so many years with with the elephants and Bowman and Belly, I would have to say, because you're spending so much time. And I think a documentary like this that basically just captures their entire life, one has to gain trust to be able to be there. And I think all of this comes together and you form these extremely tight knit bonds. We literally watched two young elephant calves grow up into beautiful elephants, and alongside that we got to personally experience the lives of Bowman and Belly in a very in-depth manner, and that's something that the team really had to build trust with them, and that's how the the beautiful connection was made with Bowman, Belly, Amu, and Raghu. And I think that's one of the key points as to why the documentary was so successful, because we were all so tightly knit and we share this beautiful bond together. It wasn't just a bond between them and the elephants, it was a bond between all of us. And there was a constant amount of trust every single day.
And it shows in the documentary, because the elephant, I mean, you can ask people to act in a natural way, but the elephants, you can't really train them to act in front of camera a certain way, and they're just going by the day like how they would otherwise go if there was no cameras, which really shows in the documentary. Now, if when was the last time you visited Raghu, or Bowman and Belly? When was the last time you went and just had a chat with them?
It's just been okay. So I've seen the elephants about a month ago when the Prime Minister was visiting them,
Right.
and I met Bowman and Belly for the IPL in Chennai.
Yeah.
So that was much more recent. I keep seeing them. They're very integrated into my life, and I spend a lot of time with them when I'm not on the ground doing something else. I spend a lot of time with them, and yeah, I see them quite often.
And how are the elephants doing when you saw them last? Did they recognize you? I mean, because 6 years you've been working with them.
Elephants always remember. In fact,
Yeah.
that's the one thing that they say elephants never forget. So yes, I formed extremely deep bonds with both the elephants, and they both recognize me. Raghu loves to get his tongue patted,
Okay.
and He always looks at me for treats because I used to give him a lot of treats. But it's a beautiful bond, and I know it's going to last for my lifetime. I know that they're going to outlive me, and it's a bond for life. Basically, elephants do these certain things when they see you, and they're things that he's. I'm going to use Raghu as an example, but every time I go up to him, he lifts up his trunk and he knows when I'm around. He can smell my scent, and he basically looks at me straight in the eye. We have our own little communication going, and it's something that you understand both sides. But I do have to admit that it's when you're with younger elephants, it's okay for you to be up close to them. But as they're growing old, I tend to keep a distance from myself because it's not ethical for us to go very close to them. At the end of the day, they are wild animals, and we do have to respect that. So even with Raghu, I do keep a distance, but we are aware of each other's presence and we appreciate it from a distance at this point.
Wow. And when it comes to inspiration for your work, who would you consider, to be your biggest inspiration?
I think there are. I mean, that's actually a hard question. There's so many people whose work I really go to. I like. Uh, I in fact, I love Louis C. Hoyos's work. He did The Cove, and he did a bunch of other documentaries which are just really impactful, I think. And then as a photographer, I love Sebastio Salgado's work. I think he just went out and documented an entire space that was untouched. And I think just going out and being in the field and being able to document all of this work is just it's just like really amazing. I also um, love Jane Goodall. I think she's really been out there and trying to work to bring a coexistence to the forefront. And I admire anyone's work actually who's really working on the ground to help with coexistence, because I think that's the way that we really need to move forward in today's world. And anybody who's doing any work in the smallest way possible is a hero in their own way.
Absolutely. And since you mentioned about coexistence, it need not be only in the wildlife. It need not be only in the forest. It can also be in a city like Bengaluru. What's your take on that?
I think it goes back to the space that Bangalore in specific I would like to go back to, because I actually lived there for 10 years of my life. So in such a space, what happens is that the animals used to live over there.
Yeah.
And then with all the extensive building that's happened in the recent years, animals are being forced into the smaller spaces. And I think that is basically what the problem is, because you have the loris, which is there in the IISc campus, but again, and then you have like owls in different apartments,
Yeah.
and all of these animals are trying to get the space back, and it's sad to see them in buildings when they should have tree canopies to be in, or they should have their little holes that they can go hide in.
Right.
And it's something that we really need to remember, that as we take on the world and we tend to be expanding with technology and a better way of living, I think the one thing we really need to remember is that we're not the only people trying to survive. We have animals out there who don't have a voice, who don't have the brains to go ahead with technology and so on. And we really need to pay attention to the smaller things that happen, because I remember there was an issue about sparrows in Bangalore a
Yes.
while back. And the
Yeah,
thing is,
I still remember
was
as a kid, the Majestic bus stand, the central bus stand used to have sparrows all over the bus. Now there's absolutely no sparrows. Yeah.
exactly. And I think the quicker we keep moving and wanting everything to be so modern, I think we're sort of depleting the landscape that they need to survive. And because they're so small, they don't get enough impact. I mean, the elephant whisperers was on a species as large as an elephant, and an elephant is a loved species in India and has so much prominence.
Right.
But then what happens to frogs? What happens to small birds? And things like that just go invisibly, and then one day we're just going to wake up and realize that they are no longer here,
Yeah.
and they have just gone extinct in front of our very eyes. And I think it's time to really wake up and start focusing on how we can all improve our lives and also work towards coexistence, and being able to get more involved in understanding the types of life that live around you in the cities, and trying to get involved in how to protect, stop using plastic, and different things like that, which are active enough that if every person does, will really have a major impact. Because I think it nobody's ever too small to make an impact.
Right. Absolutely. I have a very good dear friend of mine who does somewhat similar work. His name is Sanjeev Padnekar. He runs this sanctuary called Prani Pet Sanctuary on Kanakpura Road, where he rescues. He's also a herpetologist, if that's the right word I'm using. He also rescues a lot of snakes and just lets them go back in the wild. And he always puts up Instagram stories and reels saying, "They don't hurt you until you hurt them." And he always uses this caption saying, the deer is not crossing the road, but the road is in the path of the deer, because we as
Right.
humans have always taken over their land, and we are, so that's one thing which is actually true. Now I want to know, you have covered Raghu, Amu, Belly, and Bowman's story. What's next? Where are you venturing into? In which story can we get some insights?
Uh, well, that's a good question. My next documentary is going to be on the orca-human relationship, and I'm
Okay.
hoping this will open a whole new dimension and perspective onto the relationship between man and nature.
Okay.
And I will also be delving deeper into the lives of orcas and unravel the profound connection that the Haida indigenous community share with the world's biggest predator, whom they call the legends of the sea.
Wow.
And both the killer whales and the Haida people are matriarchal societies. So I would also like to explore the other parallels between the two societies.
And which part of the world do they exist? Because I really have no idea about it.
So the First Nations basically are in the Pacific Northwest of Canada, but
Okay.
you have orcas all across the world. But
Yeah.
I'll be focusing specifically on the Pacific Northwest.
Okay, so that's happening. That's going to be maybe, keeping fingers crossed, another Oscar award, another
Another.
Academy Award for Kartiki Gonsalves. Your final message to people watching and listening on World Environment Day.
I think I really want a whole lot of people to basically stop seeing animals as the other and to start seeing them as one of us. I think that is at the forefront of coexistence, to realize that we're all in this web of life together, and at the end of the day, we all sleep under the same sun, the same moon, and the same stars. We're all fighting for life and wanting survival. I think the other important thing is that we really need to focus on indigenous people, because they have such an in-depth ancient knowledge and respect for the land that they live on and that they share their space with. There is so much that we can learn from them. And I think that the respect for the land and only taking what they need is a beautiful way that we can all learn from, because that just brings in the question of sufficiency, and only taking what we need will help us uh, move forward. And we also need to look at all the places where hope is present,
Yeah.
because I think at the end of the day, mutual respect and cooperation and is basically the way forward through coexistence. And I think that's the main way that we can all move together in harmony, and I think that's really important.
Well, that's well said. That's actually that. I think if people start looking at everyone, not just humans, but every species on this planet with a little bit of compassion, I think a lot of things can change on the planet as well. Kartiki, thank you so much for connecting. Thank you so much for taking some time out, and it was an absolute pleasure having you here on the show. Congratulations once again on winning an Academy Award for your debut directed movie. You're as a debut director, you've won that award, so congratulations. Looking forward to more such documentaries and more awards, and it was an absolute pleasure having you here with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.